Hello, I'm Sensei Alex Kakio. Thank you for joining me today for this evening's meditation and sutra study class. We'll be reading from the Vimalakirti Sutra, and this evening's practice will consist of 15 minutes of guided meditation, a reading from the sutra, a Dharma talk, and then a Q&A. The title of today's talk is Chasing After Enlightenment Experiences, the True Dharma and Chasing After Enlightenment Experiences. These teachings are offered free of charge, but if you'd like to make a contribution, information for that is in the description. And if you'd like to do a deep dive into Buddhist training, check out my book, Perfectly Ordinary Buddhist Teachings for Everyday Life. There's a link to a sample chapter of the book, also in the description for this talk. So we'll start today with meditation. I only have one rule, and that is that you need to be comfortable, and you need to be in a position where you can breathe freely. So I'll give you a moment to get to a spot where your back is straight, chest is tucked down. If you're sitting on a cushion, that's great. If you're in a chair, that's also great. If you want to, you can close your eyes. If not, I recommend keeping them about half closed, eyes pointed downwards at a 45-degree angle. I'll be keeping time, so you don't need to worry about. And as always, we'll start first by focusing on the breath. So we're breathing in and out through the nose, signaling to our body that we're safe, that it's okay to relax. With every inhale, we poke the belly button out. With every exhale, we bring it back. Not so much that it's uncomfortable, just in and out. As our belly pokes out, that allows our diaphragm to drop into that empty space, giving us a good lung full of air, which again signals to our body that we can relax. Maybe as we're breathing very gently, we want to move our head from side to side, focusing on that physical sensation, bringing ourselves even more into our bodies. And when we're ready, bring our head back to center, and we just breathe. If our mind wanders, that's perfectly okay. That's what minds do. We simply notice, and then bring our attention back to the physical sensation of our breath. Our diaphragm expanding and contracting. The feeling of air moving in and out of our nostrils. And we'll just breathe for a few minutes. We'll continue breathing for just one more minute. I'll keep time, so don't worry. And then we'll begin the visualization exercise. Good. Now we're going to envision a ball of energy in our bellies, right behind our belly buttons. This in Buddhism is called the hara, and it's the seat of our spiritual power. And the color of this energy is whatever our favorite color is. If it's blue, our energy is blue. If it's red, our hara is red. And every time we inhale, that energy gets a little bit bigger and a little bit brighter. It's almost like we're blowing on a campfire to help it catch. And we're just going to do that for about a minute, just helping that fire in our bellies get as big and as bright as it possibly can. I'll keep time. You just breathe. And if your mind wanders, that's fine. Just bring your focus back to the visualization once you notice. Now that we have our heart burning brightly in that space behind our belly button, we're going to send our energy down to the center of the earth. And at that center of the earth, we'll find an even bigger ball of energy. That's the same color as the energy in our hara. So if our hara is blue, the energy at the center of the earth is blue. If our hara is orange, the energy at the center of the earth is orange. And there's a channel or a pipe going from the energy center in our belly down to the energy center in the center of the earth. So just take a few moments and visualize that pipe. Send it all the way down into the earth until the energy in our hara and the energy in the earth is one. We'll just take about 30 seconds to do that. I'll keep time. Then we'll continue with the visualization. If the mind wanders, that's okay. Just bring your focus back to the visualization. And if that's difficult, just start all the way at the beginning with the breath. That's fine too. And now what we're going to do is with every inhale, we send energy down into the earth. And with every exhale, we pull that energy back into our belly. Only we always bring back twice as much energy as we send down. So imagine you're sending down 1 pound of energy with the inhale. And with the exhale, you pull up 2 pounds of energy. So the earth is feeding your hara, feeding your spiritual power, feeding your awakening. And we'll just do this for a few minutes. Send energy down with every inhale. Pull even more energy up with every exhale. We'll do this for about 30 more seconds. And then we'll continue with the next phase of the visualization. I'll keep time, so you don't need to worry about that. Wonderful. Now we're going to gather all that energy up into our hara, space between or behind our belly button, the seat of our spiritual power. And we're slowly going to let that connection with the earth dissolve, knowing that we can reestablish it anytime we need to. Also noticing that even though we pulled so much spiritual energy from the earth was not depleted. It can give and give, and it never runs out. Now we're going to take our focus and put it on the hara, on that energy in our belly. And we're going to direct it to the soles of our feet. All that healing spiritual energy goes to the soles of our feet. And we just watch it as it channels down our waist, down our legs, our calves, our toes. We see the energy moving from our hara to the soles of our feet. Now we'll take this healing energy, we'll move it to the tops of our feet. Covering them in healing spiritual power. Whatever our favorite color is, that's the color of the energy. We may feel a little bit of warmth coursing through our body as we do this. Now the energy moves up to our shins and our calves. We can almost visualize ourselves as an outline of a human body, and the energy is slowly moving its way up. Now it's at our knees, thighs and the back of our legs. Then it moves to our waist. As we do this, we continue to breathe in and out through the nose, pushing the stomach out with every inhale. Now the energy is at our stomach, in our diaphragm, and our chest. It hits our shoulders and courses down our arms, all the way to our fingertips. So everything from the soles of our feet to our shoulders and our arms is filled with healing spiritual energy. And finally, we move it up so it fills our heads. So everything from the top of our head to the soles of our feet, we filled with the spiritual energy of our hara. And we'll just rest here for a while, continuing to breathe, bathing ourselves in this healing spiritual light. We'll do this for about a minute. I'll keep time. Just continue to breathe. And now for the last part of the meditation, we're going to draw all of that energy back, noticing that we haven't lost any of it. In fact, we have more than when we started, thanks to the generosity of the earth. And we're going to bring it back slowly, bit by bit, to our hara, to that space behind our belly button. And we'll continue to breathe for another minute. In and out, in and out. And when we're ready, we'll come back into our bodies. And if our eyes are closed, we'll open them. Wonderful. Thank you for doing that with me. Maybe we'll shake ourselves a little bit, bring ourselves back into the moment. And then we'll go ahead with tonight's reading, which again comes from the Vimalakirti Sutra. And to set the stage for this evening's reading, Vimalakirti is still in his hut, and Shariputra has just entered the hut, and he notices that it's empty, which is strange. And the reason it's empty is because Vimalakirti, through his Miracle powers has emptied it of all furniture. So Shariputra walks into the hut. He sees Vimalakirti stretched out on the sofa, sick, but otherwise all right. There's no furniture. And that's where it starts. Let's see. At this point, Shariputra saw that there were no seats in the room. He thought the elder Vimalakirti knew what he was thinking and said, Shariputra, which is it, sir? Did you come for the Dharma or come seeking a seat? Shariputra said, I came for the Dharma and not for a seat. Vimalakirti said, O Shariputra, those who seek the Dharma should begrudge neither body nor life. How much? To seek the Dharma is not a seeking in the context of form, sensation, concept, processes, and consciousness, nor a seeking in the context of the realms, dhatus, and intrusence, ayatanas. To seek the Dharma is not a seeking in the context of the three realms of desire, form. It should not be attached to the Buddha in seeking, nor be attached to the congregation of the Sangha in seeking. In seeking Dharma, one should seek without recognizing suffering. One should seek without cutting off the accumulation of suffering. One should seek without contriving the complete realization and cultivation of the path. Why? The Dharma is without contrived theories. If one says, I will recognize suffering, cut off the accumulation of suffering, and realize the extinction of suffering, and cultivate the path, this would be a contrived theory and not to seek the Dharma. O Shariputra, the Dharma is named extinction. If one practices generation and extinction, this is to seek generation and extinction, not to seek the Dharma. The Dharma is named the undefiled. If the dharmas up to and including nirvana are defiled, then this is defiled attachment and not seeking the Dharma. The Dharma is without any locus of its practice. If one practices in the Dharma, this is a locus of practice and not to seek the Dharma. The Dharma is without grasping and forsaking. If one grasps and forsakes the Dharma, then this is grasping and forsaking, not to seek the Dharma. The Dharma is without locus. If one is attached to locus, this is to be attached to locus and not to seek the Dharma. The Dharma is named without characteristics. If one understanding accords with characteristics, this is to seek characteristics and not to seek the Dharma. One can abide in the Dharma. If one abides in the Dharma, this is to abide in the Dharma and not to seek the Dharma. One cannot see, hear, sense, or know the Dharma. One practices seeing, hearing, sensing, and knowing. This is seeing, hearing, sensing, and knowing, and not to seek the Dharma. The Dharma is named the unconditioned. If one practices within the conditioned, this is to seek the conditioned and not to seek the Dharma. Therefore, Shariputra, if one seeks the Dharma, one should be without seeking regarding all the Dharmas. When he spoke these words, 500 gods attained purity of the Dharma eye with regard to the Dharma. So, I like to talk about enlightenment because a lot of people think that enlightenment is the goal of practice. And enlightenment experiences are the goal of practice. And this is understandable because Buddhist teachers, men and women in robes like mine, spend a lot of time speaking about enlightenment and enlightenment experiences. Probably too much. That's why I personally, in my own practice and my own teachings, speak about enlightenment very little. Because what ends up happening is that people understandably think that the whole goal of the practice is what we think of as enlightenment. Whether that's being able to move through the world without feelings or emotions, whether we think it's far out spiritual experiences, astral body projections, monks floating on their cushions. And I like to think of these in the way that Gudo Nishijima Roshi discussed them, as little miracles. That stuff happens. People talk about it. It's interesting. But that's not the goal of practice. The goal of practice is to realize our enlightened nature and to save all beings from suffering. The reason that Vimalakirti was chiding Shariputra is because Shariputra came into the hut looking for an enlightenment experience. When he asked, "Where are the seats?" he was asking, "Is this it?" I came in thinking that there was going to be this magical, highly realized teacher in front of me, and instead I see an old man on the sofa and no chairs. The chairs in this situation are a metaphor. We talk a lot in Buddhism about the seat of enlightenment, the lion's chair. And what that is in the sutras being thousands of yojanas tall and deeply ornate with all 7 types of jewels. This is a metaphor for enlightenment. Shariputra came in wanting enlightenment, and he was disappointed when he didn't find it. So Vimalakirti asked him, "Did you come for the seat? Or did you come for the Dharma?" Meaning, did you come here to receive teachings of the Buddha? Or did you come here hoping to have an enlightenment experience that you could brag to your friends about? And Shariputra wisely said, "I came for the Dharma." Now, of course, this begs the question, what is the Dharma? What's the point of all this practice? And Vimalakirti does something that we often find in Buddhist teachings, in that he contradicts himself. He says that it is the undefiled, but if we try to stay in the undefiled, then that is not the Dharma. Actually, I'll just read what he said, because he puts it a lot better than I will. "O Shariputra, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas have an emancipation called inconceivable. For a Bodhisattva residing in this emancipation, the vastness of Mount Sumeru can be placed with a mustard seed." That's not the reading. Sorry. "The Dharma is named the undefiled. If the Dharma, up to and including nirvana, are defiled, then this is the defiled attachment, and not to seek the Dharma. The Dharma is without any locus of its practice. If the practice is in the Dharma, this is a locus of practice, and not to seek the Dharma. The Dharma is without grasping and forsaking. If one grasps and forsakes the Dharma, then this is grasping and forsaking, not to seek the Dharma." In other words, the more we try to define and put enlightenment in a box, the farther away we get from it. This is why Buddhist teachers say, in order to get enlightenment, we have to not try to get enlightenment. That's why we say things like Buddhism is useless, that there's no point to the practice, because we're not trying to attain anything. And again, that's what Vimalakirti is getting at. Shariputra came in trying to attain something. Vimalakirti told him to stop. But there's another issue here, which is that we can get very attached to the practices designed to help us realize our own enlightenment. So maybe we think the robes are Dharma. Maybe we think the bowing and the chanting and the meditating is the Dharma. And this is troublesome as well, because then what ends up happening is when we're not able to do the bowing and the chanting and the meditating, we think we're doing something wrong. We think our practice is limited, that it's not deep enough. And what Vimalakirti is trying to show us is that the Dharma is beyond words. It's beyond experience. We use these practices, the Dharma talks, the bowing, the chanting, to eventually move beyond them, to simply have the experience of enlightenment, to have the experience of the Dharma. It's like being in love. You can't put being in love into words. You can't describe it. You know, being in love is not giving a card on a birthday, but giving a card on someone's birthday is an expression of love. Being in love is not a wedding ring, but giving someone a wedding ring is an expression of love. When we talk about the Dharma, and now we're specifically discussing the Buddha Dharma, these practices we engage in are expressions of the Dharma, not the Dharma itself. They're expressions of enlightenment, but they're not enlightenment itself. And people have interesting experiences on the cushion where they feel like they're one with the universe, where their body disappears, where they float, astral project, etc. This is an expression of enlightenment, but it's not enlightenment. In truth, those experiences are no more important to the practice of Buddhism than, say, washing the dishes or taking out the trash. Why? Because washing the dishes and taking out the trash are also expressions of our own enlightened nature. They're expressions of the Dharma. Now, this raises an interesting question, because I've said many times, and I'm sure you remember me saying that we're already enlightened beings. So if we're already enlightened, why do we need to learn to express our enlightenment? Why are we engaging in these practices? And in the Lotus Sutra, which we'll discuss in the future, the Buddha describes it as a royal prince. Now, the prince is royalty already. There's nothing he has to do. But he has to learn how to express his princeliness. He has to learn how to be a prince and eventually how to be a king. So even though he's already royalty, he has to take classes. He has to learn statecrafts. He has to learn diplomacy, the art of war. Not so that he can become a king or a prince. He's already a prince, but so that he can manifest his prince nature when the time comes. And the same goes for us. We're already enlightened. We're just learning how to express that enlightenment. And what Vimalakirti is getting at is that our daily life is how we express it. But if we get attached to any part of our daily life or to our spiritual life, if we think the bowing is enlightenment, the chanting is enlightenment, the far off spiritual experience, if we think that's the Dharma, then we'll miss it. Then we've come for the seat and not for the Dharma. So we just have to do the practice just to do the practice. We take out the trash just to take out the trash. We are loving to our neighbors just to be loving to our neighbors. We meditate just to meditate. This is that middle way between the absolute and the conventional, between the seat and the Dharma. And it's in that way, not in chasing enlightenment experiences, that we truly realize enlightenment. Amitabha. So that's the talk for today. I hope it was helpful. I see we already have our first question. If you'd like to participate in the Q&A, just type a question in the comment section, the live chat. I'll be sure to respond. If you're watching this after the live stream, you can place your comment in the comment section, and I'll respond after the fact. Divad Buddha X says, what would be your definition of nirvana? And that's an excellent question. It's an important question because nirvana and enlightenment, these are the two things that are most often misunderstood in practice. So the word nirvana, or nibbana, as it's sometimes called, means to extinguish or to blow out. And the question then becomes, what are we blowing out? What are we extinguishing? And in Mahayana Buddhism, what we're taught is what we're blowing out is the three poisons of greed, anger, and ignorance. So we can think of these as flames inside of us, and they're causing us to act out in unskillful ways. When we extinguish those flames, those three poisons, we break the cycle of suffering, and then we experience inner peace. This is nirvana. Now, it's important to understand, however, that nirvana is not something that we experience one time. It exists on a cycle. So again, thinking of a candle flame, sometimes the flame is very big, very bright. Sometimes it's very dim. Sometimes it goes out altogether. So we can go in and out of nirvana just like a candle flame can get brighter or more dim. The purpose of the Buddha Dharma is to help us dim those flames, to extinguish those flames of greed, anger, and ignorance. This is nirvana. So there are certain practices we engage in, like the 6 perfections, like the 4 noble truths, like the Noble Eightfold Path, that allow us to dim those flames of greed, anger, and ignorance and move more deeply into nirvana. Now, as we become more mature in our practice and more skillful in our behavior, that nirvana state, if you will, becomes more and more a part of our daily lives. So maybe we have something that really upsets us, and before we start practicing, on a scale of 1 to 10, it's a 9, just really sends us through the roof. But as we learn to deal with those candle flames, that fire dims, our reaction becomes less. Now, instead of a 9, that same thing is only a 6 in terms of reaction. Eventually, it becomes a 3 or 1. This is what happened to the Buddha. The Buddha had a very rich emotional life, just like everyone else. The difference was that he was so skillful in dealing with the flames of his greed, anger, and ignorance that to the layperson, it looked like he was in a constant state of peace. And it's the same with us. We have these flames and we work to extinguish them through the practice. However, as Vimalakirti warns us, if we become too attached to the practice, then that too becomes a source of greed, anger, and ignorance. This is where sectarianism comes from. Well, you'll have people argue over, is Zen Buddhism better than Theravada Buddhism? Is Pure Land Buddhism better than Nichiren Buddhism? We engage in these practices, but we understand that they're not the end-all be-all. They're simply a means to an end. An effective means, but a means nonetheless. So, I hope that answered your question. Anyone else? Questions for this evening, either about the talk or about Buddhism in general? Anko says, interesting, Sensei. How do we reach a state of jhana? Okay, so jhana is interesting. Jhana is something that's focused on more in the Theravada tradition. But there are 4 states, and that you're essentially moving deeper and deeper into the states of universal consciousness. I'm trying to think about how I want to answer this. I'd say the best way to move into a state of jhana would be through seated meditation. Through the breathing meditation, actually, that I discussed earlier in the talk when we were doing our guided meditation. And what that does, that single-pointed concentration on the breath, it allows us to draw our focus in. So we're not so focused on what's going on around us, what's going on in our head, and we let go of all of the defilements that are clouding our mind. And as we let go of those defilements and we focus solely on the breath, our consciousness becomes more awake and we can move deeper into jhana. That being said, I think it's important to note that jhana is a dharma. And like Vimalakirti said, we can become too attached to dharmas. So I encourage people to not think so much about mind states while they're meditating and simply do the meditation just to meditate. Because what ends up happening is we start to second guess ourselves and we try to think, well, what state of jhana am I in? And how do I get to the next one? And how is my meditation going? And then it just becomes another thing on the checklist we're trying to do, no different than putting money into our checking account or getting a nicer car. So if we're really trying to move into deeper states of concentration, I'd say focusing on the breath during meditation is the best way to do that, most effective way. However, I'd also say that we should remember that the jhana states, while interesting, aren't the goal of the practice. They're just another part of it. Washing the dishes, taking out the trash, just as good. Any other questions for the evening? Sorry if you hear some noise. My cat wants to play with the microphone. Okay, well, it looks like that's it. Thank you for joining me. The next time we meet will be this Sunday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We'll be live streaming Dharma Sunday. That practice will consist solely of a Dharma talk. Anko says, that makes sense, Sensei. I'm glad you appreciate it. Frank says, thank you, Sensei. Thank you. I appreciate you guys being here so much, and I appreciate your questions. So yeah, Sunday, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is when we'll do Dharma Sunday. That will be solely a Dharma talk. And we do this every Wednesday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. That's a guided meditation, a sutra study, and then a Q&A. Allison Gerfin says, thank you. Thank you, Alice. I appreciate you being here. Allison is one of our regulars, as is Divad and Frank. And Anko, I hope to see you again as well. It's just lovely to have you all here. Thanks so much. So until next time, Amitabha.